Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today is a tough day because obviously the content that I put out is very much crypto orientated, finance orientated, but Russia just invaded Ukraine and it would somewhat feels wrong in me to release something that is just so far the point of whatever is going on in this world. And so today is a different type of video from what is actually my usual type of content in terms of finance, crypto, metaverse, lifestyle orientated, because there are human lives on the line now, and it doesn't feel right to basically be talking about that at this moment in time and just pushing my own agenda. So whilst I do still want to create, I'd like to take some time to educate myself and educate people of this channel and people that do end up watching this why Russia has invaded Ukraine from the perspective of a Russian on Reddit. And I haven't fact checked every single bit of this, but what I do want this video to be for you watching is an opening of kind of like a starting point of what is happening right now, because I'm struggling to understand throughout this mass media and everyone doing different bits here and there, like one place where I can actually truly get the information that I need for what is going on right now. So it's going to be pretty much a dictation, and I'm going to try and put my own spin on some of the stuff if it can't really be explained or it's a little bit difficult to understand. So let's just get straight into it. All right. So before we get into why Putin wants to invade Russia, or wanted to invade Russia and now has invaded, we need to go through a history class. Throughout all of history, Ukraine was Russia, as in there was no difference. This goes all the way back to the Middle Ages, when the Russians, were able to overthrow the Golden Horde, the Mongols. Well, that and the Rus killing Poland, Lithuania in a war. But as you can see, Russia and Ukraine were one for hundreds of years. Ukraine got the nickname Little Russia because of it. But when World War I came along, nationalism was spread throughout Europe, and eventually Russia erupted into this complicated civil war, or more commonly known and basically the Russian Revolution. During this, Ukraine revolted because they wanted to be independent, but they failed and the Soviets came through and crushed them. But the Soviet Union ended up giving them a republic. Just a republic was part of the Soviet Union. During their time under the Soviet Union, Crimea, that little island at the bottom right of Ukraine on the map that borders on a sea, was transferred from Russia to Ukraine for reasons that will become more relevant later. Fast forward a couple decades and oh, would you look at that, the Soviet Union collapsed and surprise, Ukraine is independent. Yay. Wait, so what about the nukes that the Soviets kept in Ukraine? You see, nobody liked countries to have nuclear weapons of any kind, so the world powers, i.e. basically USA and Russia, came together and agreed that Ukraine would remove its nukes and give them to Russia, for that the nuclear war would be less likely. This would also be important soon. Now, Ukraine is independent, but they lean towards the father Russia in foreign and domestic policy. But the problem is that the government is corrupt. The people in 2014 were sick of it and had a revolution. The pro-Russian government was overthrown in favor of a Western one. But one issue, native Russians live on the east side of Ukraine. You see, Ukraine during the Soviet Union can be compared to the States in the US. People moving throughout because it was easy. So many Russians settled in the east of Ukraine, but now Ukraine is an independent country who has recently moved towards the west, away from their mother country. Many Ukrainian Russians did not like that, and with help from Putin, revolted against the new Ukrainian government. Now Putin, who was in power for over a decade, acts like a lot of old Russian kings, i.e. makes Russia strong. One was in doing this, supporting the Russians revolting in Eastern Europe and Crimea, from before the little island. Okay, so Crimea is so important because of its military advantage. It holds a nice naval base in the Black Sea that Russians can use, and Russians wanted the naval base because Russia does not have a lot of warm water ports, and Putin was going to use a revolution as an excuse to annex it, which he did. But what about Eastern Europe? Well, just leave them there and support them to keep Ukraine weak. And it's just wild that Putin must be loving the fact that Ukraine gave up the nukes so easily so he can just freely bully them, because it was one of their biggest deterrents. any country's deterrent for that matter. So why can Putin do this? Well, one of the reasons is that he's justifying that it's in Russia's backyard. So Ukraine throughout history was viewed as Russian. Ukrainians and Russians are bubs. So Ukraine is like super close to Russia. Another way is that Putin is trying to make Russia great again, one of the great aggressors of the world, and in doing so, keeping NATO at bay. So you see, the Soviets used this thing called the Iron Wall, which was back in World War II, well, not just after World War II, during the Cold War, and the Warsaw Pact that was Eastern Europe. Their puppets protected them from the West. It was like this amazing border that was a safety net for them. But after 2 decades after the collapse, NATO kept spreading east and now is closer to Russia than ever before. When the revolution happened in 2014, Ukraine was in fear of falling into NATO. Putin didn't want that because NATO would be right on his doorstep. So fast forward to today, Putin simply is trying to keep Ukraine weak so he can cover his southern border, while at the same time trying to grow Russia's strength. In short, Putin wants Ukraine because he wants to make Russia great again. He's trying to keep NATO at bay since Ukraine is so close to Russia, both geographically and culturally. It cannot fall into Putin's eyes. He's also using Ukraine to grow Russia's power, hence why he took Crimea in 2014. So in short, it's that. Now you might ask yourself, why is it that we're providing sanctions, or we're putting on sanctions, or the rest of the world is putting on sanctions, and what is that got to do with anything? Russia can just keep going, or they can't, or they can. Well, you'd think that if the whole world is giving them sanctions, they can't. But Putin, over the last decade or so, has been stockpiling gold. He's got this fascination for it. And it kind of makes sense now. Russia has stockpiled about $640 billion worth of gold, and which is equivalent to about, I believe, 17 months of export trade. So he can finance this war and keep Russia without actually exporting anything using that gold. But also in the markets, specifically today, he's been selling off US dollars, which is completely, he's trying to destroy the dollar's value. But at the same time, I think there will be a point where he says that he would like oil from Russia to be sold in rubles. Now, the likelihood of that happening is slim, but there is a chance that it might, because he controls a significant proportion of some of the oil in the north, in addition to financing a massive trade route through the Arctic, which in the summer months will half the time of getting through the Suez Canal from one end to the other, well, getting through that particular trade route. I really don't have anything to say massively on crypto in this insight. Basically, it's not been a good day for crypto, but to get around the sanctions, he might actually probably bring forward the whole digital ruble and what that might look like. And I don't know how he'll do it or how Russia would do it, but that would be their way of getting around the sanctions and still being able to trade with external partners, because crypto is not as heavily regulated as other places. It's a sad day. It's a tough day, and it's hard to process. At the start of this day, I didn't think much of it, but now, after watching some of the TV, reading a lot of Reddit and Twitter, and trying to educate myself, I felt like this was important. So, quite a conversational video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this allows you to go and educate yourself and understand what might be going on. But there's a power play that Putin's trying to put on here, and Russia is trying to go through the cycle of becoming great again. I'm not sure why it loves that particular part of its history. I just hope that we as a world can come to terms and understand that, this doesn't need to always be happening. We don't need to go through cyclical wars. We were doing so well, and now this is going to set us back years if this continues. And to be perfectly honest, I don't want to be wrapped up in a war either. Have a great night. My heart is with the people of Ukraine and everyone that's involved in this. And please educate yourself. Thanks. Bye.